I am not insisting on the outcome. I know it's going to be fine. But the how and the what exactly, we'll see. So to think big and to have impact, we need to take... There's a lot of people out there who teach you about thinking big, but I found the feminine perspective the most curious, and not the feminine perspective solely, but the feminine versus the masculine perspective, like deciphering these two so we can actually understand what we're doing when we're thinking big, and how does the feminine think big and how does the masculine think big. And first of all, I know I'm saying think big, of course I mean feel big, but you know, in the matter of how we say things colloquially, we would say think big. That's the catchphrase here, so I'm sticking with it. And of course, it's an embodied thinking. Otherwise, it doesn't work anyways. We're not doing theoretical stuff here. So how does the masculine think big? Well, it's very simple. If you look at the core, it has a vision. He has a vision, and he creates the structure around it. And ideally, he sources from the feminine the saturation, the inner richness, and the expression thereof. Otherwise, it's empty and toxic. We all know that. And the other way around, the feminine thinks big by expressing herself from her inner riches. Ideally, she creates a structure and has a vision. Otherwise, she's all over the place, flowing freely. So it's very simple. How do we think big as a feminine or a masculine? And in the integrated version is also very simple, because the integrated version says hard gravity. Hard gravity is only possible if you have a vision and you can create the structure to source the feminine inner richness and express it, and then you'll have hard gravity. Only then, of course. And that's why is the patriarchy failing? Because they're not sourcing from their essence. And if the patriarchy is now learning to source from their essence, from his essence, let's use the pronouns to make it a little simpler to understand. That's why the feminine is rising. And you know, there is all these sayings, the future is feminine, etc., etc. And I always say, no, it's integrated. I find it funny because the other day I spoke to somebody and he said to me, we've spoken for like 45 minutes-ish. I was in a room full with men, not a single other feminine in there. And he said, but you know, while you're speaking, you're quite in your masculine. And I said, well, I'm in a room with 13 animals. That's how it felt like. Why would I be soft and open? Of course, I have my shield up. I have my armor up. It's impossible to be soft and feminine if there's 13 men around. And even if there is one person who everybody kind of affiliates me with, still that's not a very safe space for me to be very much in my feminine. I'm feminine enough if I enter a space dressed like I was dressed, and I know that my radiance then speaks for it. But it's funny, and then I posted yesterday that she is not feminine enough, says the masculine who doesn't understand masculinity. And I think that David Data's mind-blowing, eye-opening, there, same, notion that in 150 years we will consider these times as barbaric, because we put all these women and men into tight places together without equipping them with understanding what they're actually subconsciously playing out, radiating out, sending out, and without the tools to kind of shield themselves or to withdraw in a certain way, and how to respect the boundaries that have been created. It's fully unaware, because we know that the peak of culture is stage 4 and a bit, and stage 4 and a bit behaves distant on the outside, but only on the outside. Underneath is still all the stuff going on. We have just cultivated ourselves enough that we feel like we're not really having to go there. And I always say compliance starts in the head, in the mind. Of course, you don't touch somebody. And ideally, you don't speak about it either to a person. But the thing is, as a sensitive and receptive human being, you feel what's going on. And if we want to start to think big as women, or if we want to start to think big as men who want to include the feminine, what we need to do is we need to understand that any kind of distance is always killing thinking big. And I think that is the main notion. The moment I distance myself from anything, I'm not thinking big anymore. And now, if you look at our culture, what we have here going on right now, since COVID, distance is even more cultivated. So even though it's kind of a little bit of a lashback at the moment, which means that people want to be closer again because they had this lots of distancing themselves for a long time. And then after that, there was almost like an event peak. Everybody was totally scared in politics. People kind of huddling together now. But anyways, so there is this new imprint in culture that distance is good because everything else is dangerous. A new somatic marker for danger when you come physically close has been established. And at the same time, a new desire for more closeness, because now we have all these digital tools here, totally established. What was crest of the wave 5 years ago is now state of the art. And now now we're there, and everybody feels like, oh, yeah, that's cozy now. I can do this from home, and then I still can go in the office, and we understand that we need to be social with each other, and all the HR and people in culture departments now try to figure this out, and the experience creators and user experience creators understand, okay, how can we put more connection in that whole thing? But this is what culture does. This is not pioneering, and this is definitely not thinking big. And how does thinking big and having a great vision to have impact, a lot of impact, or I don't know, maybe you don't want to have a lot of impact, you just want to, whatever a lot is for you. It's not necessarily, a lot does not necessarily have to be the same for me as it is for you. It definitely, and most importantly, start in the middle means presence. And presence is to be with what is. Not to be thinking at the same time, I'm getting hungry. Not to be doing mails while we're listening. And at the same time, it can be exactly that we're doing mails while we're listening because something's coming up, and that's also now. Or that I'm not ignoring my body's impulse. So the whole presence thing, I feel, is much more complex than we've ever discussed it. Because presence is being with what is. What is. The first thing that is always the body. And my reaction towards what is coming on, what is being pushed onto me, into me. That's being with what is. And that means whatever happens to me right now is not wrong. To hold that means that I have to consciously create my surroundings. Because otherwise I put myself in situations where I get so much penetration from the outside that I'm losing myself, that I'm getting overwhelmed, exhausted, tired, etc. We're in a culture where exhaustion is a status symbol. If I say my calendar is full and I'm totally stressed, people think you're really important. The more often I say I'm only working 15 hours per week, the more people say like, how does she do it? And the thing is, being present with what is means that you cannot do so many things at the same time, because otherwise you're not present. You're multitasking, which means you're doing a lot of things without feeling any of them. You kind of share your presence with 7 things at the same time. That's exhausting. That's why we're exhausted. And I don't know who said it. Bashar. I'm pretty sure it was Bashar. He said that you're exhausted because you're trying to be somebody who you are not. It's the only reason for exhaustion. And exhaustion kills thinking big. Because when you're exhausted, you want to think smaller because everything's overwhelming. That's why the whole architecture of ease topic is making us move into a place where it's not so exhausting anymore. Otherwise, we will never have impact. It's impossible to have impact when we're tired. And if you're constantly tired, if we go home at night and we feel exhausted from the day, we are wrong at what we're doing. We are not who we really are. We're not supposed to be exhausted. We are not supposed to be at 5 o'clock looking at our watch and thinking, I need to go home, I can't handle it anymore. Or I'm so happy when this is done. This was too exhausting for me. Being present allows us to think big. Why? Because this is where the left and the right, the feminine and the masculine come together, which means we have the collective responsibility on whatever is happening in the space. We feel everybody and we create for the greater good, and not the greater good as in, I want to say Normengard, for anybody who has read Harry Potter, which is the same as Auschwitz. Thank you. We're not we're not sacrificing ourselves here at all. But we are so saturated on the feminine end that we can actually hold the whole space and think for everybody, feel for everybody. We need to have collective responsibility in place. Otherwise, we're not thinking big. We're thinking for ourselves, full stop. Many people don't even manage to be responsible for ourselves, as in something is going on and I understand how I created that and I'm not othering it anymore. That's already really tough. And the moment we've mastered that, the next step is, okay, because I'm responsible for my own experience here, talk about experience, then I feel, okay, if that becomes easy, then and only then I can be responsible for somebody else as an impulse reaction. I will always feel like it's an obligation if I'm not even responsible for myself, because it's kind of tearing me apart. So the masculine within us has to actually own our experience at all times, especially if we create experiences for others, because everything else will be out of integrity. Collective responsibility has the beautiful emotion of humor, ease, and irony behind it. That's why I always feel like if people think collective responsibility is exhausting, then you're not in collective responsibility, then you're in obligation. The mind mixes these two up easily. But because when you're in collective responsibility, you enjoy making others feel better, creating structures for them. Enjoy, joy. It's your joy that everybody else here is happy, and not because you want to be loved. You do it from love, not for love. And that's thinking big from the feminine. That means I just love to love ahead. You know, pay it forward, the beautiful concept. That's like a capitalized version of loving ahead. And why does it? This is how capitalism is actually making sense. You pay forward, you give ahead because you feel like, my God, I received so much. Somebody else have that too. I don't even need to know who it is. And that's not a selflessness. That's not I'm taking myself out of the equation. I've just been nourished. So my cup runneth over. And then I want to give ahead, and that's loving ahead. And somebody recently said to me, I have to be careful if I hold the space and make sure that everybody is happy and nourished, because for me as an old pleaser, I'm scared that I'm going to drop back into the pleasing. But that means we're not in responsibility. If that would only happen, if you're not in responsibility with our own experience, because then we're not serving from the full cup, we're serving from like finite resources. So the masculine has to own his experience and has to be really comfortable with sitting in the nothingness and in the not knowing. Those are the two things that are necessary to think big. You have to be happy with the not knowing, and you have to own your own experience. And from that comes the collective, the impulse reaction of wanting to create a structure for others and wanting to inspire others. And the thing is, if you finally nail the responsibility for your own experience and the being able to sit with complexity, to sit with the problem, to sit with not knowing, then you're like, thank God, I know what to do. And the problem then is we know these people who are then very self-occupied, constantly just happy with the not knowing and constantly happy with the I own my experience. And then what? Because stepping into acting from that again feels like a step back. Like that friend of mine said, I'm scared that I'm going to drop back into pleasing. Because what's missing there is on the feminine side. If I'm not 100% sure that I'm being nourished by myself, I'm being mothered by myself, I nourish myself. And if I'm not constantly aware that I'm deeply connected with myself, I'm not losing my connection to myself anymore, then and only then will I want to offer collective responsibility. That's why the feminine is so important, to think big. Because if we want to think big and we want to have impact, what do we need to do? We need to go out there and create structures that serve everybody and inspire people to join us. And we need to express ourselves from something that's so deeply sourced that people actually believe that we can handle it, that we're going to do this, and we need to walk our talk and all these kind of things. Everything else is a fig leaf, a nice try to change. It's not going to really change anything, and especially not fast. It's going to give ideas, and it's going to do, if you're really good at it, it's going to be like acupuncture needles. But the acupuncture needle only works if you really hit the sweet spot. And if you want to hit the sweet spot, you need to understand that your own frequency has to be super high and deeply connected with your context. I know a lot of people whose frequency is fantastically high and they're ascending, but they don't understand what's going on in anybody else. That's not having impact. That's overwhelming everybody. And I know this because I tend to overwhelm people when I'm deciding to send, and I kind of root myself in myself and just push out without feeling the resonance. It's almost like a channel switching. I'm usually always in receptive mode, and then I do the opposite, and I go into a masculine version of myself, and I just push out. And that's not having so much impact because I've lacked the resonance of the other people, and then emergence is not happening. So to think big and to have impact, we need to take these two, feminine and masculine, to the next level, and none of them can go to the next level without the other. There is no such thing as collective responsibility that is not sourced from the feminine reception and expression. And there is no such thing as love and resilience and abundance without the masculine structure and vision. It does not work without the other. That's why it's so important, and that's why the future is integrated. And then, and only then, we'll have presence, we'll have heart gravity, all the aliveness is coming, because I am a cooperative component, and I attract the other cooperative components, which means within me, and then with everybody else. But if I don't source from my inner while I'm pushing out, while I'm speaking, and if I'm not in the context of what's going on, because I'm so occupied with myself, because either I'm a sender, or I'm overwhelmed, or I need to sort myself. I feel everybody out there is totally self-involved. The moment awareness hits. And the thing is, that's the difference between awakened and initiated. In the awakened phase, we are constantly trying to understand what are we actually creating here. And only when that is when that has happened, when we understand, okay, I know I'm doing this, and then suddenly the responsibility hits, and the responsibility is not just I'm responsible for myself, but I'm actually responsible for you and you and you and you, because you're all me. I cannot say this is not my thing. I cannot distance myself anymore. And not because I really love this person, but in general, I cannot distance myself from anyone. And then how do you not lose yourself and your center in the eye of this collective storm that's going on all the time? And mastering that, and mastering doesn't mean controlling it or steering it, it means navigating it. Holding steady while holding nothing, my beautiful new favorite lines, are doing exactly that. Holding nothing just means that I am not insisting on the outcome. I know it's going to be fine. But the how and the what exactly, we'll see. I don't know how it's going to come along. I don't even know exactly what's going to come along. I know how the feeling is going to be. And then we will see what aligns with that. And that is creating heart gravity. Because that is presence with everything that is within me and without me. And only when we have both at the same time, we will have big impact. Thank you.